A young man slowly blinked awake, uncertain if the strange sights before him belonged to reality or his imagination. Standing nearby was a girl called, yet before he could utter a word, she vanished without a trace. In her place, a group of terrifying monsters appeared, poised for combat. The creatures advanced toward where the girl had been, moving with ease, while the boy struggled to understand the chaos unfolding around him. Suddenly, an avalanche swept through the scene, overwhelming everything like a battlefield, leaving him confused about what was real. She started to question whether these might be someone else's memories instead of her own. Despite that possibility, the memories still brought intense pain. The protagonist jolted upright in bed, his scream echoing through the room as he came to the realization that everything had only been a dream. Surveying his unfamiliar surroundings, he searched for something recognizable. Confusion clouded the young man's mind as he rose from the bed, eager to make sense of what was happening. It seemed he wasn't being held captive after all. When he gazed out the window, the cityscape finally sparked his recognition. Yet, it was the sight of his own reflection in the glass that truly startled him. The boy gazed into the mirror, realizing the reflection did not belong to him. A wave of anxiety overcame him, and tears slipped down his cheeks as confusion filled his mind. He struggled to recall his true identity, and as he searched his memories, an image of a masked hero surfaced, someone holding the girl he had seen in his dreams. Suddenly, footsteps sounded at the door. Entered, her face bright with a smile, cheerfully wishing him a happy 16th birthday. The boy looked at her in bewilderment, unable to find his words. He managed to utter only the word cat, which echoed back, puzzled by his strange response. As studied his face and noticed his tears, she drew closer, concerned. It couldn't be true, since she had passed away when they were both just kids. Suddenly, the realization struck him. He had somehow leapt forward in time by a whole century. He found himself encircled by loyal followers, leading the existence of the 12th sage, while occupying the foremost position among the congregation. He was known as Chrome Gate, recognized as the era's sole master of time magic. The master acknowledged his achievement, noting that he had surpassed all others to become the mightiest monster on Earth. He was praised for developing a groundbreaking theory of time magic, which drew upon the abilities of countless demon kings. With such mastery, there was no question that he reigned as the world's most formidable wizard. However, by the time he reached this peak of power, he discovered that it was futile. Those he had hoped to protect had already vanished, and even his homeland had been reduced to ruins. He refused to accept that destiny, which led him to make a different choice. Determined to begin his life anew, he found himself inhabiting the body of a teenager, vigorously shaking a girl as he demanded to know the exact date and year. The girl responded, informing him it was April 10th in the year 1200 according to the goddess's calendar. Confused and unsettled by his intense questions and frightening expression, she stared at him in shock. The boy appeared to be completely overwhelmed, even releasing a laugh that seemed fit for a villain on television. Lifting the girl into the air, he shouted triumphantly that his plan had succeeded, and he had finally returned to the past. Disoriented by the shaking, the girl pleaded for an explanation, unable to comprehend his words, but he was far. Chrome remarked that now he had the chance to touch as much as he liked, but quickly corrected him, insisting that he couldn't do that and questioning his odd behavior. The main character responded by pulling her into a firm embrace. Once he finally released her, he offered an apology, explaining that he was simply overjoyed to see her again. Found his reaction surprising, especially since they spent so much time together. Watching Chrome break into uncontrollable laughter pointed out just how unusually he was acting. The expression of shock on his face was so intense that even found herself taken aback. The young man apologized once more. After regaining his composure, he took a moment to admire the peaceful city from a century. He believed that, on this occasion, he would be able to change his approach. He was no longer the child he once was, yet he knew he needed to remain vigilant, for that day would mark the beginning of all that was to come. When gaze lingered on him, the young man noticed and wondered if something was troubling her. The attention made uneasy, feeling as if she were caught in a sweet, awkward moment. She insisted nothing was wrong, but she couldn't shake the sense that something about him had changed. He seemed older, more grown-up, and the shift unsettled her. Her observation left him momentarily taken aback. Trying to change the subject, complimented him, mentioning that he usually looked rather somber, so seeing his smile earlier had brought her joy. This. It was confirmed that the boy was about to celebrate his 16th birthday, and it was noted that he had grown into an admirable individual. The boy's eyes grew wide and filled with tears after hearing those words. His parents hurried over, concern etched on their faces, as they checked his forehead and asked if he felt ill. However, the youngest child clarifies that there was no problem at all. He simply feels joyful to share his birthday surrounded by the people he cares about. It turned out to be unexpected since the boy rarely shed tears. Once all the misunderstandings had settled, everyone prepared for breakfast. The boy volunteered to assist with the dishes and welcomed his offer with a smile. However, blocked his path, repeatedly calling out to him, insisting that she deserved to take a seat. Her behavior reminded him of a persistent pet. Meanwhile, Chrome clarified that he prioritized helping his mother, since managing all the dishes alone was a tough task for her. He gently ruffled the young girl's hair, her stubbornness clear as she insisted on taking the dishes instead of him, believing it was only right since it was his birthday. She made her way, struggling slightly, into the living room, her arms full and her movements awkward under the weight of so many plates. Observing her clumsiness, he offered his assistance, but she refused, insisting he remain seated. In that moment, an overwhelming sense of washed over him. He felt a strong sense of, convinced these events had already unfolded once in his life. In a matter of moments, Elle lost her grip and spilled the entire breakfast onto the floor, mirroring a moment he distinctly remembered from another existence. But now, equipped with the power to manipulate time, he rushed forward and caught the girl before she could hit the ground. Without hesitation, he kept channeling his magic, allowing himself to rewind the sequence further. It was a period that existed prior to any of those events unfolding. The girl's scream abruptly ended as she exhaled in relief. She noticed with surprise that Chrome had caught every falling dish. Wondering when he had managed to get so close, she remembered he had only been sitting in his chair a moment earlier. Chrome, however, remained silent, his main concern focused on whether the girl was unharmed. He felt a jolt of surprise at his own actions, realizing he had instinctively used abilities he hadn't even known he could access in this new life. Checking on, the protagonist asked if she had twisted her ankle, but she quickly assured him she hadn't, although she found herself caught in an awkward and embarrassing position. Flushing with embarrassment, she hurried to her feet while Chrome expressed her gratitude to the protagonist for helping immediately after breakfast, feeling the need to apologize for asking so soon. She explained that she truly needed his assistance. The boy reassured her, insisting she need not feel bad, as he was glad to lend a hand. Deep inside, he sensed it was best to approach the day as usual for now. He then offered to handle the laundry himself, making it clear that she could leave the task to him if she was busy. Seemed taken aback by his offer, but he explained further that, given her busy schedule, she could entrust the chore to him. When she caught herself watching him, the boy questioned if something was wrong. Simply remarked on how mature he. Since Chrome was an apprentice living in the house, it made sense for him to lend a hand, and working with Sirius had become a normal part of his day. Just before heading out, he ran into once more. She inquired about his opinion on her new apron, then let slip that tonight's dinner was actually a surprise party for him. The boy, captivated by the girl's charm, pointed out that now that she had told him about the dinner, the surprise was ruined. After this awkward moment, left the house. Experiencing these events all over again felt surreal to Chrome, almost as if he were watching life unfold in a distant era. In his previous life, the home he lived in had been destroyed overnight by. Without warning, he caught sight of unusual motion nearby and himself to defend against a possible assault. At that moment Sirius soon appeared, offering an apology as he explained that he had noticed the mood was different than usual. Concern flickered across his face as he checked if the blond young man was injured, but the latter insisted he was unhurt. However, the garden had not fared as well, its ruin making Sirius anxious. He knew his daughter would likely be upset with him. The protagonist observed Sirius intently, finding it difficult to reconcile the young man's gentle manner with the fact that he was a skilled swordsman. Yet, when Sirius gripped his sword, a powerful and intimidating presence surrounded him. Watching Sirius attempt to put the flowers back in order stirred a sense of nostalgia in the protagonist, and he only realized he had spoken. The protagonist stood facing the training dummy, silently wondering about the strength and control he could muster with his present physique as he prepared to swing the swords. He focused intently and drew his sword from its sheath. Without hesitation, Chrome lunged at the scarecrow, his weapon flashing through the air with swift movements, as Sirius observed every action with sharp attention. Chrome moved with mechanical precision, cutting through the target. Although he had assumed he was quick, he soon realized that the creature could outpace him with surprising speed. He struck the scarecrow one last time, finishing the fight. Still catching his breath, Sirius found himself at a loss for words when the young man inquired about the outcome. Unsure how to respond, Sirius eventually remarked that Chrome appeared noticeably changed from the day before. The usual tension in Chrome's shoulders and wrists had disappeared, and this time, he demonstrated precise swordsmanship, maintaining perfect form and fluid movements without losing alignment with his center. Chrome was genuinely taken aback by the unexpected praise, since his fencing skills had been developed on his own. The recognition brought him a quiet sense of pride. Yet Sirius remained curious, wondering aloud about what kind of training could have caused Chrome's abilities to improve so dramatically overnight. In reality, Chrome's newfound talent was the product of countless battles fought over the... He knew he couldn't admit this to Sirius, who assured him that understanding the basics would suffice for them both. The training session came to a sudden halt when someone else approached and greeted Master Sirius. Chrome couldn't help but notice the newcomer, as her presence immediately drew his gaze. Standing before him stood a strikingly beautiful girl named, her expression cold and uninterested. Was the daughter of the Duke of Scarlet, a noble family counted among the kingdom's four most powerful lineages. In addition to her prestigious background, she had shared her early years with both the protagonist and Elle, making her a childhood acquaintance of them both. Their first encounter had taken place when they were all much younger. The memory brought to his mind a time when they were deciding where to spend the day, and he had once again mentioned the library, just as he had the previous day. Instead, the girl proposed they visit the lake. He found her suggestion appealing and dashed ahead, declaring that the last one to arrive would have to become the priest's wife, prompting the girl to protest that the rule wasn't fair. Ended up reaching the lake first, leaving him to mutter complaints about how quickly she could run. At the same time, the girl fell behind the others, asking them to pause for her. When the pair arrived at the lake, they called out that she had already been left behind, so there was no need to hurry. During the commotion, the girl tripped and tumbled to the ground. Seeing this, her friends felt guilty, realizing this was exactly why they had warned her not to go so fast. 2 years prior, the girl, known for her constant complaints, began her training with the boy, both learning under Sirius's supervision. Although she was the Duke of Scarlet's daughter, the young woman aspired to join the ranks of the court knights. Her abilities developed rapidly, and soon she, the story's main character with her superior fencing skills. Before he became aware of it, the girl had already slipped away from his grasp with. Their differences in social status and abilities eventually created a gap between them. She acknowledged the master with gratitude for his kindness that day, then urged the boy not to quit, warning that his defeatist attitude might influence others. Despite her words, the boy moved closer to his former friend. He lifted her off the ground, overjoyed that she was finally free. Feeling uneasy, quickly asked him to put her down. The person questioned the boy about his troubles, then struck him across the face with a punch. Chrome expressed his regret, clarifying that his excitement at seeing the girl had caused his behavior. In his eagerness, he had overlooked the fact that she disliked him then, a fact made clear by her cold, uninterested stare in response. She averted her gaze, not wanting to meet the boy's eyes. Sirius stepped in, cutting through the awkward moment by asking if everyone was prepared, and mentioned they would practice more because it had been ages since their last mock battle. Before he could finish, the girl quickly objected, firmly refusing to spar with someone she considered an inappropriate and unreliable opponent. The boy felt stung by her harsh words. Pointed out that the gap in ability between them was significant, making it a poor opportunity for her to improve since she wanted to get stronger. The master shared his understanding of her emotions right then, yet he pointed out that his apprentice had grown more powerful. In fact, he suspected the apprentice could surpass the girl in strength. Found this amusing and wondered if the boy was being serious, since the main character was incapable of casting magic. She then faced Chrome, questioning what someone like him was doing with that sword. The person taunted him, questioning whether he was attempting to act like a hero, just as he used to do during their childhood. The girl continued to insist that he had failed to keep anyone safe. Unexpectedly, the boy apologized, yet insisted he had a strong justification for wielding the sword. The girl grew restless and insisted they begin the simulated battle right away. She declared that if she emerged victorious, Sirius would be forbidden from ever wielding a sword again, a statement that left him in shock. Despite this, Chrome agreed to the terms without hesitation. He appeared noticeably stronger now, yet doubted whether he truly believed he could defeat her. Chrome admitted he was unsure, but added that if he did win, he wanted to be friends with him again, just like before. His request irritated the girl, prompting her to demand clarification about his intentions. Unbothered by her reaction, Chrome simply pressed her for an answer on whether she would accept the challenge. He secretly hoped they could rebuild their friendship and get along once more. Unaware of the truth, she could not have guessed that early death in a previous life shaped his actions now. The warrior consented to the challenge, her confidence evident. She believed the boy posed no real threat and planned to conclude their duel with a golden victory. Eventually, Sirius broke the silence, checking if both participants were prepared and cautioning them not to lose control, since even though their fight was only a simulation, restraint was still necessary. Chrome brimmed with confidence, knowing this was his opportunity to approach things in a new way. In the past, he had often wished he could finish what he started, and now he finally had the chance to see his ideas come to fruition. He realized that, although the girl had given her word, he doubted they would return to being friends. Still, he sensed that their connection this time would not be the same as it was before. He was prepared to go to any lengths to make it happen. The match started, and almost immediately the girl found herself shocked as Chrome's sword swiftly knocked her weapon away. Meanwhile, Sirius wondered if it was possible for him to alter what was destined to happen. He imagined a day would come when he would defeat. Stunned by her quick defeat, the girl struggled to accept what had occurred and looked to the boy for an explanation. He calmly clarified that he had simply acted with remarkable speed. Sirius quickly declared who had won, acting on instinct. Chrome checked on his opponent, concerned for her well-being, while she admitted that she felt as though she was giving up. Hearing this, the boy felt a sense of relief. Despite everything that had happened, the girl still had more to do. She drew 2 blades, making it clear through her actions that she had no intention of finishing the fight so soon. The protagonist is caught off guard by her unexpected attack. The girl rushed toward him, her voice ringing out, but she suddenly became trapped within an endless barrier of protective magic conjured by the protagonist, leaving her uncertain about her next move. He listened as stern voices scolded the apprentice. He suddenly understood his actions when he noticed seated on the floor, recognizing that the boy had reacted instinctively through a conditioned response. He walked up to the girl, concerned about whether she was injured, but she appeared too frustrated with herself to answer, struggling to contain a scream. Meanwhile, wondered aloud about what had just happened. She realized it was the first time she had witnessed the boy display that ability, and she wondered if he had been fooling everyone all along by acting as though he had given up. She then continued her train of thought. She wondered why, if he truly possessed that power, he chose not to remain by her side. The protagonist finally understood her feelings. Her explanation revealed the reason behind her dislike for him. Had always kept her distance from others, despite often feeling isolated. Realizing this, the boy felt guilty for failing to notice the truth until now. He walked over with a warm tone, admitting that he had expected her to doubt him. He revealed that up until just yesterday, he had felt powerless, which made him think he didn't deserve to be near her. Yet, as he offered his hand to help her stand, he assured her that he would no longer turn away. Because of this, he made up his mind to begin again from the start. She gives in, expressing regret for the confusion that had come between them. Chrome responded by admitting that he had been aware of the truth all along, which left her puzzled. However, the main character went on to describe her as an incredible girl, acknowledging that while she sometimes made mistakes, it was clear that she always put forth her greatest effort. There was a particular quality about her that he found genuinely appealing, and because of this, he wished they could return to being friends. Hearing his honest admission left the girl feeling embarrassed, prompting her to ask him to refrain from making such flustering remarks. The group remarked on how unusual the protagonist seemed, calling him Ani. Hearing this nickname, the girl felt her embarrassment deepen, as she realized others had noticed the comment. Quickly fled the scene, insisting that she was unaware of anything. As the boy stood by himself, he began to question whether he and his new companion would be able to get along. Sirius admitted his astonishment at how effortlessly the boy had managed to overcome. However, the protagonist explained that had simply been careless, a point the master had to concede, knowing all too well that his apprentice often acted with excessive pride. He noticed that the student's movements were remarkable, so fast that even he struggled to follow them at the end. Because of this, he began to doubt if the boy truly was Chrome, adding that it was acceptable if the boy chose not to respond. However, rather than demanding an answer, he decided to challenge the boy to a match against Sirius, hoping to gauge his true abilities. Sirius then stated that he wished to witness the boy's full effort in battle, and made it clear that he would fight with complete seriousness. During the simulated match against, the man realized the protagonist was not trying his best. The battle began with high intensity, and Sirius fought with full force, which intimidated Chrome enough to make him back away from the oncoming strikes. He activates his ability to speed up time, moving at 3 times the normal rate to offer assistance. Both of them concentrated intensely, their determination so fierce that perspiration seemed to stream from their faces. He narrowly avoided yet another blow from Sirius, letting out a breath of relief. The man watching couldn't deny his amazement at his skill. While he pondered the situation, he realized that the magic at his disposal did not boost his physical abilities, since his strength remained unchanged. When the boy listened to this explanation, he remarked that his master possessed remarkable powers of observation. The man went on to explain that although Chrome was quick, his sword strikes lacked the force needed to truly amplify his power. Now, the man challenged Chrome to battle seriously. With his body strengthened and calling out for Chrome to give it his all, the man moved with even greater speed. And Chrome. He began to speed up time, moving 4 times faster to defend himself against every strike from his opponent. The effort quickly drained his energy. The body had not yet grown used to handling such a large amount of magic. The fact that the matched the pace with ease made it even more impressive. Sirius concentrated on battling the boy, and at last, he swung his blade near the boy's face, hurling him backward through the air. However, Chrome remained upright and refused to go down. He had anticipated his master's strength all along, despite relying on enhancement magic to gain an upper hand. Sirius easily outclassed him with superior swordsmanship. He also noticed that Sirius could rapidly interpret and respond to even the most chaotic moves. In addition, traces of the style's ghost sword technique could be seen in his strikes. As Sirius raised his voice, a realization struck him. Chrome would need to push his powers further, accelerating to speeds 12 times faster than normal. In the blink of an eye, Chrome disappeared from sight, leaving the instructor utterly astonished. The boy suddenly emerges, positioning himself just behind the other person. With his sword aimed at his own head, he declared that this was his true way of fighting. After a moment's hesitation, Sirius considered the situation and then let his sword fall, accepting defeat. The boy observed that his apprentice truly had become more powerful in real life. In truth, he could never figure out the reason behind the lengthy process of building his own strength. Chrome quietly advised that he wasn't required to say anything unless he truly wished to. Despite this, the boy persisted, observing the sword and noting that its handling revealed much about its owner. He explained that this blade belonged to someone whom the sword itself had never cherished, someone who fought to shield others, even as tears fell and frustration welled up inside. Without a doubt, the sword was a kind and gentle one. The boy had put in a great deal of effort to reach his current position, a fact that Chrome acknowledged. With warmth in his tone, Sirius gently reminded the boy that, regardless of others' opinions, he already felt proud to call him his disciple. Although he tried to be truthful with himself, he believed he had already shared all his knowledge about swordsmanship. Still, he trusted that if any assistance was ever required, he would always be there to provide support. As the afternoon wore on, the boy took a moment to relax. Watching Sirius battle with full effort had filled him with joy, and he felt content having observed both Sirius's magical abilities and fencing techniques. However, the moment to depart had already arrived. A notification appeared. Noticing the boy was fully dressed, paused him and inquired if he planned to leave. He replied that he was, mentioning he intended to take a walk. Before leaving, he requested permission to take the seeds from the table, along with a few scraps and fragments of magical stone. She agreed, mentioning she was planning to throw them away anyway. The woman then inquired whether the protagonist had seen, since the girl had gone out again despite it being nearly time for dinner. She wondered aloud if urge to wander came from her adventurous spirit, which sometimes surfaced. However, the protagonist reassured her that he knew where had gone, asking her not to be concerned. The woman smiled warmly, expressing that she was glad to see him as well. The boy appeared puzzled, but clarified that he was welcome to bring home with him and that she didn't mind if he was a... Chrome tried to brush off the uneasy feeling in the air, but his steps were halted when Sirius stopped him and questioned where he was headed. The protagonist felt a jolt of surprise upon realizing that the blonde man was out patrolling the city, then clarified that Chrome was on his way to meet their daughter, which prompted the blonde to tease that Chrome was about to engage in a rather intriguing game with her. Flustered, the boy quickly bid them farewell. As called out a reminder for him to be careful, a bittersweet memory surfaced. This was the last conversation he would ever have with his family. Just as he was about to cross the threshold, Chrome paused and turned around, calling out to Sirius, and he was stopped just as he was about to walk out. Wondered aloud if he truly intended to return home, leaving him silent and uneasy at the suddenness of her question. After a moment, she seemed to recognize how strange her words sounded, prompting him to reassure her that he absolutely would return and plan to reunite with. With that, he offered his farewell. The young man then made his way through the bustling city streets, moving past groups of children until he finally arrived beneath a tall tree. After examining the area intently, he determines that this spot is where the catastrophe took place. The area was filled with blooming flowers. The hill offered a breathtaking panorama, perfectly justifying the name Armada, known to all as the City of Flowers. As a child, he would often spend hours playing there alongside his two closest friends. His gaze softened as he admired the lush greenery, memories swirling in his mind, until he noticed Ella nearby and recalled how she once vanished in that very spot. Eventually, the girl noticed him as well and acknowledged him with a friendly greeting. She remarked on how unusual it was for him to visit that particular place. He reveals that his reason for coming was to find her. This unexpected revelation catches her off guard. The young girl proceeds to clarify that had sent him to fetch her. The young man informed the group that had requested he announce dinner was approaching, and by the look on the girl's face, it was clear she was surprised by how much time had slipped by. Shifting the conversation, Chrome wondered aloud about the girl's reason for being there, but she admitted she was just as clueless. He remained unconvinced by her response. The girl let out a laugh and wondered aloud if the situation wasn't a little odd. She suddenly began speaking strangely, explaining that she felt compelled to leave, though she couldn't understand the reason. Chrome, still somewhat confused, questioned her about where she planned to go. Despite already possessing all the knowledge the girl had to offer, he listened intently, then clarified that the reason was connected to the Demon King. Despite being entrusted with the responsibility of keeping it hidden, she ended up confessing to the young man that she was, in fact, a heroine. She had always believed she was destined to save the world. Noticing that she had been speaking at length, she quickly expressed regret to her friend, aware that he was taken aback by the flood of information she had just shared. Despite this, she let out a laugh as she realized that he showed no sign of surprise. The protagonist attempted to cover up his reaction, insisting that everything was unexpected to him. Even though it was truly his first time hearing the news at this moment, his response betrayed otherwise. He struggled to keep his cool, remaining motionless and stunned as he silently wondered how his friend could possibly be the heroine. The boy's remark causes the girl to laugh out loud, then question his readiness to trust her so quickly. Despite everything, she couldn't help but question things herself, since both Elle and the Demon King played crucial roles in the history of that land. The girl went on to clarify her intentions, revealing that she needed to battle a creature destined to threaten the world in the future. Because of this mission, she explained, she would soon embark on a journey. The main character quietly observes the girl, waiting as she eventually realizes that sharing this information with him was truly important to her. At that time, Chrome had been too young to grasp the meaning behind those words, so they barely registered with him. Now, however, everything had changed. Was determined to share something important with him before her departure. She falters, her speech tangled as she searches for the right words. This hesitation reminds the protagonist of a moment when the girl struggled to confess something important. Just as she is about to speak, the sound of the clock ringing interrupts her. This sign warned that the monsters were on their way. Found herself so distracted by the unexpected commotion in the city that she broke off her speech, visibly startled by the sight. On that particular day, the emergence of the first Demon King took place within the depths of the great labyrinth of. Alongside him, a massive swarm of monsters surged forth, flooding through the city gates. Observed the swarm of strange beings before her, curiosity filling her mind as she tried to figure out their true nature. At that moment, Chrome disclosed that the rampaging swarm of monsters had already started. Previously, the disaster had claimed around 671 lives, leaving only one person alive. As Elle observed the creatures' movements, disbelief washed over her at the unfolding chaos. The relentless attacks threatened to destroy the city, so she declared her intention to intervene. Her announcement caught the young man off guard, leaving him confused about her sudden resolve. But Elle's determination was unwavering. She believed she stood a real chance against the monsters if she confronted them directly. Chrome called out to Elle, insisting she shouldn't go and urging her to stay, explaining that he felt no personal stake in the fight, and that escaping would be pointless since Sirius would surely handle the invasion. Elle, however, only instructed Chrome to remain where he was and apologized, feeling bound by her responsibility as a heroine. Elsewhere in the city, frightened citizens watched the monsters. Word of the monster horde quickly spread to Sirius, and the terrifying creatures continued their relentless approach, striking fear into everyone. The townspeople, already on edge, anxiously searched for safe hiding spots. Amidst the chaos, Sirius raised his voice above the crowd, urging everyone to remain calm. He assured them that he would confront the monsters before they reached the city, and he welcomed any capable fighters to assist him. Inspired by his words, the townspeople started arming themselves, preparing to defend their home. As Sirius moved forward to stand guard, questions about the cause of these events raced through his mind. The men promptly departed from the city, and soon enough, Sirius, recognizable by his blonde hair, encountered the very beast he had been searching for, a massive creature charging toward him. Despite the danger, he successfully brings it to a halt by relying on his combat abilities. The group approached the outskirts of the city, prompting the young man to instruct the others to reduce the speed of their mounts at any expense. As more monsters drew near, Sirius positioned himself defensively, signaling to his allies to remain alert. Before long, the chaos of battle unfolded before him. In the midst of the devastation, Elle appeared, clearly shocked by the scene she encountered. Spotting her father locked in combat with another creature, she called out to him in alarm. With expert skill, he dispatched another creature with his sword, causing the earth beneath him to rise. He was concentrating so intensely that he forgot to watch his back, which caused to urgently call out and warn him to pay attention. Although the moment to act had passed, an explosion erupted at that exact spot, hurling Sirius through the air until he slammed painfully into the ground. The creature pursuing him grinned with satisfaction at the turn of events. At that moment, the girl believed to be the story's heroine let out a terrified scream. Intense hatred surged within her, filling her entire being. She uses this moment to snatch up the sword lying on the ground. Rising from the ground, she struck down the terrifying beast. The woman questioned her whereabouts, feeling shocked to learn that her father was still alive. Even so, she realized it was not yet the right moment for him to battle again, given the overwhelming number of monsters still around. Taking over where he left off, the girl confidently grasped the sword, demonstrating remarkable skill. As she shielded her father from harm, a desperate cry escaped her lips. Among the frightened onlookers, one man doubted her abilities, believing they stood no chance. Despite his skepticism, Ella stood firm, determined to fight off the monsters at any cost. She felt a deep need to protect not only the city, but also her parents and, above all, Chrome. Just as she passionately declared her resolve, a sudden blow struck her squarely in the back, forcing another scream from her. As she spun around to identify her attacker, her eyes widened at the sight of a monstrous being with a sharp blade protruding from its face. Shocked and repulsed by the gruesome image, the girl accidentally sprayed her juice, unable to hide her horror. Her father delivered the final blow to the creature that had threatened her. Unaware of the full extent of destruction the monsters had brought upon her, concern grew within her that people might still be trapped inside. Despite these worries, her resolve to keep battling remained unshaken. Injured but undeterred, she pressed on, clutching her sword, which seemed to share in her determination. The creatures picked up speed as they closed in, and Sirius kept a careful eye on their every move. In the midst of the turmoil, one of the monsters seized a citizen by the head, clearly intending harm, while the city around them had already descended into total disorder. Without warning, a girl's piercing scream echoed through the air. Ella stood before them, her clothes torn and tattered, yet her determination to battle remained unshaken. She darted around with frantic energy, refusing to give up, and the creature facing her held its ground, showing no sign of backing away. Surrounded by the ruins, Chrome began searching for the girl. Once he spotted her location, he was taken aback to see that she was actually battling. Memories flooded back to him of the first time these events unfolded when he had stood by helplessly. Back then, he had been unable to rescue a single soul, let alone prevent Elle from causing disaster. By the time he truly understood what was happening, he had become the sole survivor. All of that, however, had happened in the distant past. Now he had succeeded in returning to the crucial point in time. At that moment, it dawned on him that everything he had just experienced had only been flashbacks, and in reality, he was still standing among the flowers. The girl mentioned that she had to leave, but unlike before, he decided to handle the situation differently by reprimanding her and instructing her not to act that way again. He gently took the girl's hand and reassured her that she was under no obligation to leave. As she began to protest, the young man patiently told her that becoming a heroine was not something she had to do if it wasn't her choice. He insisted that taking on such a role would only lead to pain for her. There was no need for her to bear that weight. Despite all this, she hesitated. The girl firmly believes that without her actions, the task would be left undone by anyone else. Determined to protect everyone, the boy insisted on taking responsibility for saving the city. His decision left uncertain and puzzled, but he brushed aside her confusion, quickly assuring her that everything would be fine and promising to keep everyone safe from that moment forward. He hurried after the boy, determined to scold him, but the boy had already disappeared into the distance before she could reach him. He tapped into his power to increase his speed. He sprinted toward the city, his resolve unwavering. The intention was for the day to turn out well. He had recently been reunited with Ella and her adoptive parents, both of whom appeared to be in good health. From his bag, he retrieved a small magical stone he had collected at home earlier, bringing it to his lips. His thoughts drifted to with whom he had mended his relationship. Activating his 7-fold speed ability to increase his agility even further, he considered that, if he used a mana crystal as a source of magic, he could continuously employ advanced powers without difficulty. Determined to protect those he cared about, he prepared himself for what was to come. Meanwhile, noticed unusual activity throughout the city and pondered the cause. Sirius eventually located, checking on her well-being. At that moment, they observed some activity within the city. The source of the movement was Chrome, darting through the streets with impressive speed. He sprinted non-stop until he arrived at the Legion's location. At last, he had discovered what he was searching for. He felt pleased with their presence. Once more the boy relied on his incredible speed. Electric sparks burst from him, giving the impression he might overload at any moment. He dashed through the monsters, cutting them down in an instant. He didn't pause until he had completed every single one. Not even his sword survived. It shattered from the force. Despite his progress, he realized something was still incomplete and noted that a century had already passed. For many years he had not encountered such a formidable beast, and as he stood before the largest one, he realized how much he had missed this challenge. Now, he understood that he was about to face the first Demon King, the ancient dragon known as. Memories flooded his mind, recalling the moment his friend confronted the ancient Demon King. He vividly remembered the tears streaming down the girl's face, her cries echoing as she witnessed the monster's furious roar. Despite her fear, she dashed in his direction, only to be struck down by a devastating blast unleashed by the creature. Later, when Chrome regained consciousness amidst the shattered debris, astonishment filled him as he spotted the ominous figure looming in the distance. He watched the enormous shape, noticing that everything had changed. Now he possessed something more. He felt self-assured, as he admitted to overlooking the massive being standing before him. The Demon King drew near, demanding to know the identity of the stranger and questioning his audacity for standing so boldly. Despite his use of enigmatic magic, it appeared clear to everyone that he was not the hero. At that moment, the boy discloses that his connection to the heroine goes far beyond mere childhood friendship, leaving the Demon King visibly stunned by this unexpected revelation. Before he could contain himself, he erupted in laughter, mocking the boy for being foolish. The idea seemed completely absurd to him, and he dismissed it with another fit of laughter. In his mind, there was no possibility that the boy could ever take the hero's place. He sensed no trace of magic within that delicate frame. Still, the boy had the audacity to challenge the monster, and the man's laughter only grew louder at the sight. Laughter filled the air as refused to accept the truth, clinging to disbelief, while Chrome remained serious, clearly uninterested in any playful banter. He drew his sword and declared his determination to defeat as many Demon Kings as necessary. Was taken aback by the human's audacity. 2. The idea that such a minor human could ever overcome a king seemed utterly impossible. The creature let out another laugh, clarifying that every demon was bound to obey the Demon King, as it was a fundamental rule in their world. Wanting to prove just how much power a Demon King held, he unleashed a destructive beam aimed straight at the boy, leaving chaos in its wake. His actions were filled with pride and overconfidence. The figure instructed him to witness the powers on display. Yet an unexpected sight emerged. Through the swirling smoke, the boy did not falter but stood his ground, his face set in a determined expression. Gripped by fear, tried to understand the situation by questioning what was going on. The boy replied with uncertainty, wondering aloud if he might have encountered a monster. Meanwhile, the Demon King stood in disbelief, persistently demanding to know how the boy remained unscathed and upright, unable to comprehend the absence of injuries. Despite having launched an attack that could not be dodged, the boy felt disappointed. He had anticipated every move his opponent might make. The monster, now burning with rage, himself to unleash even greater wrath, fully aware that his efforts were ultimately futile. Once more he unleashed his chaotic energy toward the boy. This time, however, the boy activated his time-stopping ability, halting the chaotic force in midair. The glowing energy edged closer, but the protagonist remained unconcerned, having pushed his body into a state of pure bliss that rendered the Demon King motionless, like a sculpture. By entering this ecstatic state, he ensured his form could not be altered, creating an impenetrable barrier of defense. Having skillfully avoided the attack, he wondered aloud whether the Demon King had any stronger moves to offer. The creature's rage intensified, unable to accept that such an unbelievable situation was unfolding before it. The boy selected another item from his collection and hurled it toward the Demon King. The objects were tiny seeds that quickly spread across the floor. Chrome then activated temporal acceleration, and massive trees erupted from the earth, encircling the monstrous figure. The Demon King let out a furious scream, demanding to know what was happening. Despite the sudden barrier, the creature refused to back down and prepared to shatter the thick trunks. At that moment, the boy cast a time freeze, locking the Demon King in place and preventing it from moving the trees. Once again, the dragon. The creature unleashed its chaotic energy, aiming directly at the protagonist. Pouring all his strength into the attack, he knew it was his only option left. Nevertheless, as was often the case, skillfully evaded the strike and shifted the focus to a discussion about what the future might hold. Expressed his interest in discussing the ambitions of the first Demon King, the very being the monster aspired to become. According to theory, this Demon King would one day slay the heroine and destroy her, setting the stage for the onset of the Dark Era. This catastrophic event would merely mark the beginning of widespread disaster. The Demon King, perplexed by the boy's extraordinary actions, began to wonder about the boy. Despite being questioned, Chrome remained silent on that point and instead finished explaining his thoughts, firmly declaring his refusal to accept such a future. At that moment, the boy decided he would finally resolve every lingering issue from before. The Demon King, trapped among the forest and utterly drained, could barely hold himself upright, his energy spent, drool slipping from his mouth. Despite this, Chrome remained upright and confident, taunting the Demon King by questioning whether these feeble efforts were truly his best. He announced that it was time for him to demonstrate what he could do. The dragon had unleashed its breath attack upon him repeatedly, saturating the air nearby with magical energy. The boy saw an opportunity and chose to harness it, drawing on the mana in the air to cast magic, a feat made possible by the century of training he had endured. The Demon King's eyes widened in alarm as he caught sight of the sudden surge of energy. Confusion and disbelief washed over him as he struggled to comprehend the overwhelming power before him. He desperately reminded himself of his own title, insisting that as the Demon King, he could not possibly be defeated by a mere human. The idea of losing in such a way was something he simply refused to accept. The boy acknowledged that his statement was accurate, noting that history held no evidence of the original dragon ever being slain. Historical accounts revealed that it was only in the final moments that people succeeded in overcoming the dragon, and at that time, he confessed that he had spent a century contemplating how to conquer the monster. His eyes grew large in surprise. The main characters activated their ability to speed up time. He skillfully shaped the mood of the surroundings, using his refined abilities. In the midst of everything happening, the boy shared his belief that nothing alive could escape the effects of time. The sight was incredible as the attack gradually eroded the Demon King's tough skin. He now resorted solely to hurling insults at his adversary, making remarks about his strength. At last, he had realized that Chrome's abilities stemmed from time itself, yet he continued to refuse this truth. As he began to disintegrate, he wondered to himself about the number of taboos the boy had managed to violate. Despite his limited abilities, the protagonist had managed to make impressive progress. However, instead of showing appreciation, he dismissed the other person coldly, telling him to leave. Yet, even as he did so, he expressed his gratitude. It was because of that being that he had pushed himself to grow stronger. The defeat of the first Demon King marked the end of his reign. Upon coming back to the city, the people remained filled with despair. Due to the effects of the time magic, rumors continued to spread among the people about the potential appearance of the monsters. As the boy walked, his steps faltered without warning. He had anticipated this moment, knowing his own strength was no match for the extraordinary abilities he now possessed. Someone soon drew his gaze. Ella appeared, hurrying over to wrap her arms around the boy. Tears streamed down her face as she held him tightly. She expressed her relief at seeing him unharmed. Considering he had suddenly run off during their talk and begun battling monsters unexpectedly, he could only respond with a smile. It dawned on him that his friend, who by this moment in the past should have already died, was now alive, proving that the events he remembered had truly occurred. The main character hesitated, struggling to find the right words before finally expressing that he had traveled into the past, returning as the most powerful hero alive, determined to rewrite history. Elle found these words completely incomprehensible. She attempted to strike the boy, insisting that he take the situation seriously. However, Chrome's attention was captured by his friend's cheerful expression, and he resolved to bring up the topic she had wanted to discuss among the flowers before his departure, though she quickly diverted the conversation. Upon their arrival at home, his parents visibly showed their relief and expressed her happiness that both children had returned safely. Rushed into her mother's embrace, and her mother immediately inquired if she had been harmed, reassured her that she was unhurt. The family then checked to make sure Chrome was unharmed as well, which brought particular comfort to the woman. At that moment, everyone in his family looked at him with gentle, relaxed. The boy felt a sense of joy at returning home at last. As the family strolled peacefully, preparing to settle in and rest, one parent suddenly recalled to ask whether Chrome had seen before arriving. The boy shook his head, denying any such encounter. Still, the parents shared that had delivered a birthday gift for the main character, catching her off guard. Her eyes widened as she realized the boy and must have reconciled. At that moment, she remembered that, in a previous life, the girl had lived in the capital and had managed to survive there even after disaster struck. Her continued presence resulted from the abrupt shift in how they related to each other. Chrome made plans to see the girl in person the following day, so he could deliver her gift himself. Meanwhile, Sirius mulled over the unusual occurrences that had unfolded earlier. The day had begun with a series of tremors that summoned a horde of monsters, only for rumors to spread that a lone, enigmatic hero had vanquished them all. Curious, the questioned Chrome about his knowledge of the event, but Chrome, uneasy, knowing anything. Sirius, however, found Chrome's response suspicious, suspecting the boy might know more since he had been in the mountains when the chaos broke out. Before the conversation could continue, stepped in, urging. Though he had spent the entire day acting as if nothing troubled him, his body betrayed the truth. Restlessness plagued him as he shifted in bed, finally accepting that his teenage body needed to recuperate. The powerful magic he had performed earlier had clearly pushed his mana circuits to their limits, and he could only hope this exhaustion wouldn't interfere with his everyday activities. He extended his hand toward the wall, testing whether he could halt time within its boundaries. By doing so, he could ensure the house's form remained unchanged, eliminating the risk of a surprise attack during the night. As he tried to relax, his thoughts refused to settle, reminding him that vigilance was necessary. The imminent rise of the second Demon King in those lands weighed heavily on his. Within the Association of Wizards, the boy discovered that this realm brimmed with magic, and the organization stood as the ultimate authority, populated by individuals who lacked any sense of morality. In his earlier life, during his time as the organization's highest-ranking executive, he gained access to confidential documents. Within those hidden records, he uncovered the link between the association and the origins of the Demon Kings. They were not ordinary creatures of nature. Instead, they were disasters brought into existence by the Wizard Association. The following morning, as they sat together drinking coffee, Sirius revealed that he had received a summons to the capital. His daughter was taken aback by the news, but he calmly explained that he needed to report to the palace about what had transpired the day before, and would also attempt to assemble a group to conduct a further investigation. Chrome then advised that Sirius should seek assistance from the local adventurers, since they could begin the search right away. Sirius thought this was a good idea, provided it did not put anyone in unnecessary danger. Unfortunately, there were not many adventurers in that city, and those present lacked significant strength. Sirius also suspected that the recent events had been orchestrated by humans, reasoning that if such an incident had truly occurred. The monsters had already been overcome, and she discovered the remains of the monsters and felt a wave of surprise. She found herself questioning what events might have unfolded in that place. Without warning, an overwhelming force hit her, engulfing her in a swirling haze of dust as the earth seemed to crumble beneath her feet. The girl became aware that someone else was nearby, a human figure. Understanding the danger of the situation, she noticed that by the time she recognized what was happening, the young man observing the scene had already taken action. She caught fragments of the dispute between Chrome and the Demon King, so while she still didn't know the identity of the person battling the monster, she watched the events unfold with intense focus. It astonished her to see that a single human was responsible for such widespread devastation. The dragon, a creature with strength rivaling that of the Demon King, had been defeated with surprising speed. This left her anxious, uncertain whether the human involved was a friend or foe. If he turned out to be an adversary, she knew she could not allow him access to her city. Despite her concerns, she found herself completely paralyzed, unable to move a muscle. As the smoke cleared, recognition dawned on her. She saw that it was Chrome standing there. Although there was still a gap between them, she sensed that the real main character was someone, or something, else, even though he bore the appearance of the boy she knew. His face lingered vividly in her memory amidst the swirling smoke, yet confusion clouded her. He practiced with his sword, but just as he thought, his strength had not completely returned. He hoped to explore a nearby dungeon, but he felt uneasy about encountering powerful foes under those circumstances. Despite the urge to act, he realized that getting mixed up in an accident at this point would be risky, since just 1 week remained before the arrival of the second Demon King. The young man gazed intently at his sword, where the polished blade revealed the familiar face of someone he recognized instantly. There was no mistaking, yet the boy couldn't understand her reason for concealing herself behind the tree. Curious, he began to walk away to see if she would follow. His actions prompted the girl to abandon her hiding place behind the stump and move in his direction. As she rounded the corner, she unexpectedly found him standing motionless right in front of her. Chrome acted as if nothing was out of the ordinary when he startled her. He pressed her back against the wall, demanding to know the reason she had been trailing him for so long. Stared back at him with a cold look, but the boy repeatedly cut her off, trying to find out if she wanted something from him. Feeling uneasy, the girl chose to be honest, recounting how the previous day had unfolded and recalling how the protagonist had urged her to go on. He remarked on the birthday gift had brought up, sharing that his adoptive mother had already let slip some hints about it and was currently searching for him so she could hand it over. The girl clarified that she already had it, though she mentioned there were additional matters to discuss. Meanwhile, discreetly concealed the package, preparing to hand it over to her friend. After a moment of hesitation, she chose to give it to him, putting an end to the uncertainty and astonishing Chrome with the revelation that a present actually existed. He admitted to himself that receiving such a gift from had come as a surprise, as he observed the boy's delighted reaction to the present. She reminded herself that their friendship would be restored, certain that their bond would be rebuilt. After all, they had made an agreement following her defeat in their contest. The protagonist saw right through her act, realizing she wasn't as tough as she pretended to be. Nevertheless, she kept up her facade, insisting the only reason she'd brought the gift was due to her own reasons, not because the boy mattered to her in any special way. As the bag opened, she discovered some adorable cookies inside and questioned whether the girl had baked them herself. She responded by saying it was never her intention to offend. She simply believed a modest present was more fitting, and that was the best she could choose. Chrome kept his ironic smile, which continued to irritate her. Before long, though, he clarified that the gift reminded him of himself. Even though the girl didn't understand his words, he gently tousled her hair, expressing his happiness and gratitude to his friend for trying. The situation left her feeling uneasy and eventually discovered them together. Curious, one of them questioned about how long she had been observing. The girl, startled by how near they were standing, couldn't find the words to reply right away. Instead, she wondered aloud if there was something going on between them, though she didn't mean it in a romantic way. She walked over too, her spirits lifted by their positive relationship. The thought that her friend had long hoped to reconcile with the protagonist filled her with happiness. No longer felt any fondness for it. Still, the girl looked forward to enjoying time with the two of them reunited. They began their journey toward the city together. It had been quite a while since the three friends had ventured out together like this. Despite the outing, Chrome reminded the group that their purpose wasn't relaxation, but to watch over the city in Sirius's absence. However, paid no attention to his reminder and excitedly pointed out a complimentary buffet serving monster meat just ahead. She had a habit of ignoring what others said, so the group simply kept moving. As they walked, they passed a market stall where two merchants discussed how a mysterious hero had recently safeguarded the city. The marketplace itself was bustling and disordered, with all sorts of creature meat laid out and merchants scrambling to arrange their goods. Observing the scene, Chrome realized that the recent invasion had actually brought a few advantages, too. She realized her earlier concerns had been unnecessary. While they walked past a vendor's stall, the shopkeeper noticed Chrome and recognized him as the leader of the patrol that day. Observing Chrome's somber expression, the merchant checked on his well-being. Dismissing the merchant's concern, Chrome inquired whether there was any trouble or if the merchant had noticed anything unusual. After a pause, the merchant explained that yesterday's tremors had damaged his furniture and even caused a crack in his ceiling. Still searching for answers, Chrome pressed further, asking if the merchant had seen any strangers nearby, especially anyone affiliated with the Association of Wizards. After taking a moment to reflect, the young man agreed and mentioned the rumors circulating about the enigmatic hero. It seemed that people were searching for this man, since a certain group had put out a generous reward for his capture, which made the situation rather intriguing. Their swift actions unsettled the boy, who hadn't expected them to move so quickly. However, the man observed that the so-called hero possessed something valuable for the organization, and recalled an old saying about how any wizard who openly showed off his abilities was never truly serious. Although it was likely difficult for the hero to realize he had become a target for these individuals, the young man understood and requested to be informed if any new information came to light. He now suspected that the association intended to get rid of him permanently. He was certain their attention was focused on his magical abilities. In the midst of the chaos, appeared to be searching for something. Observing her actions, Chrome inquired if there was a problem, which made her pause and look at him. The girl clarified that the situation was a bit different than what he thought. As the boy glanced to his side, he spotted something that could possibly explain what he had been wondering. A young girl appeared to be injured, prompting the protagonist to inquire whether she had taken a fall. At that moment, realization dawned on him regarding his friend's unusual behavior. Maintaining her usual aloof demeanor, dismissed any concern, claiming that tears in public would only create a nuisance. Before could get her words out fully, her companion had already approached the young girl, asking if she was injured. The child immediately recognized him and called out to Chrome by name. Before realizing that her bleeding was uncontrollable, he attempted to reassure the young girl, promising that he would use his magic to make the bleeding stop. The little girl felt a jolt of surprise, uncertain that the boy everyone in town called a loser could actually help her. His lips curled into an uneasy smile at her reaction, but he quickly moved forward, determined to assist. Drawing on his power to manipulate time, he focused on mending her injury. The girl rose to her feet while the boy checked that she was no longer in pain. The youngest child watched in awe, marveling at the recovery. As the group quietly celebrated her healing, simply watched from the side. Grateful, the girl expressed her thanks, and the boy reminded her to take care on her way home so she would not get injured once more. During the entire exchange, his friend stayed quiet. She waited until the girl had left before turning to the boy, unable to believe he had used magic, and eager to find out exactly what he had done. He assured her it was simply ordinary healing magic, but she quickly responded, pointing out that she was aware Chrome lacked any talent for such spells. Healing magic was extremely uncommon in that place, and on top of that, she had never encountered any kind of magic that could instantly mend an injury. At that moment, the protagonist understood he had chosen his words poorly, as he couldn't recall magic ever being so basic in the past. Luckily, called out to both of them, prompting him to steer the conversation in a new direction by inquiring about her whereabouts during her absence. With a stack of papers in her hands, she lit up with excitement and eagerly urged her friends to take a look. The list she held contained issues she had gathered from speaking with each person in the city, and Chrome found himself genuinely impressed by how quickly she had managed to connect with so many people. The problems ranged from minor concerns, such as damaged furniture or physical wounds, but since so many individuals needed assistance, the girl became enthusiastic as she eagerly instructed them to help each person in turn. As the day drew to a close, the group successfully completed the tasks they had set out to do. Chrome expressed his gratitude to his companions, who were just as worn out as he was. He then reached out too, offering an apology for having her spend the entire day with them, but admitted that in the end, he genuinely enjoyed the experience. Found herself in agreement, remembering how long it had been since the three of them had spent time together outside. With sincerity, she admitted her desire for their time together to last endlessly, softly clasping the girl's hand. But as night had fallen, the girl needed to return home, and so she departed. At the same time, hidden in a nearby alleyway, three men concealed by hoods kept a close eye on the group's actions. Unconcerned, the girl made her way back, her mind elsewhere. She was preoccupied by the realization that she hadn't questioned Chrome about what happened the day before. Still, that seemed unimportant at the moment. Echoing her friend's words in her mind, she hoped only that their friendship would endure. The wizards kept their eyes fixed on her as their forms slowly faded, sinking into the earth through the use of their magical powers. They moved behind the girl, trailing her footsteps like silent shadows. At last they closed in around her, catching her completely off guard. No one seemed to understand what was going on. At that moment, she understood that the people before her belonged to the Association of Wizards. The girl wondered aloud about their intentions. One of the men let out a laugh, assuring her there was no reason to be scared and insisting that they were not the kind of people she needed to worry about. For her, everything had suddenly become obvious as she looked ahead. The association's wizards arrived and gave their confirmation. The girl felt a wave of fear crash over her as the truth about their identities became clear. Observing the situation, one of the masked figures decided that had been the cause of the conflict that happened the day before. Wondered aloud about the association's sudden interest in her, prompting the man to explain that he had heard rumors claiming the city's hero was actually a heroine. Despite this, he expressed skepticism that could be the one. Meanwhile, the others discussed her as though she were invisible, remarking that she appeared suitable for the role since a magical aura seemed to surround her. However, any uncertainty among them faded quickly, as they knew the truth would soon reveal itself. The group reassured the girl, letting her know there was nothing to fear. All she needed to do was respond to some simple questions. Despite this, anxiety began to build among them. Without hesitation, he directly questioned whether she was the enigmatic hero responsible for defeating the swarm of monsters the day before, which caused her to recall the image of her friend's face. She stood prepared for a fight, though she kept this to herself, simply explaining that they must have mistaken her for another person. The wizards kept a careful eye on them. They soon clarified that her statements left them unable to distinguish between truth and lies. One among them remarked on how humans were known for being dishonest, yet the group found it impossible to identify deceit. This challenge became even greater whenever the individual in question tended to talk excessively. They wondered aloud if the girl understood how she could assist them. Labras remained unaware, while the man offered to assist her by referencing a well-known proverb. The girl became frightened when she realized how simple it was for him to uncover the truth after something had been broken. She swiftly her weapons. She tapped into her power, enhancing her physical strength. With every ounce of strength she possessed, she rushed toward him in a powerful assault. Because the girl's adversaries relied on magic in direct confrontations, she found herself holding the upper hand. She realized she would have to face each opponent individually. Meanwhile, a wizard began to enhance his own body, mirroring the technique the girl had used. He reached for his wand and began casting spells, catching Labyrinth off guard. The powerful blow strikes the person with sudden, overwhelming force. The impact sent them crashing into a nearby city wall. The girl let out a cry of agony, shocked that she had been struck by such a powerful spell, one of level 6. As she reeled from the impact, her eyes caught sight of a subtle but important detail. One member of the group displayed an emblem that marked him as a top-ranked wizard. She realized that although sorcerers like these were fairly common, she now found herself encircled by a group of 8. Without delay, the group moved quickly toward the girl. Still sprawled across the floor, he cast a spell in an attempt to make the girl disappear. As the girl reflected on the difficult circumstances she faced, she silently hoped she could locate her friend to offer her assistance. Labrise quickly lost strength and dropped to the ground, her energy slipping away as one of the wizard turns to his master, seeking advice about how he should handle the situation with her. This causes everyone else to break out in laughter. The superior observed that she possessed the qualities needed to serve as an excellent intermediary for their purposes. The plan involved selecting her as a candidate in hopes that she might be able to contact the demon royal family. They moved with caution as they drew near to one of the houses nearby. One of the men wearing a hood mentions that a potential unknown hero might reside in that place. People whispered that the girl residing in the house could actually be the heroine everyone talked about, suggesting they were possibly one and the same. It seemed like a smart plan to break into the house, while the sword master was out of town. They continued forward, casting a magical veil over the house. Because of this, no sounds from outside reached them, no matter what actions the wizards took. The group seethed with anger, knowing the enigmatic hero stood in the way of their wicked schemes. As one of them remarked that eliminating the hero would solve their problems, he realized that a wizard among them seemed distracted and lost in thought. The man removed his mask, clearly expressing his disbelief at the situation. He reminded everyone that, as first-class wizards, they shouldn't be facing such absurdity. Even whose abilities included level 5 magic had been powerless to halt their advance. With this in mind, the speaker sought approval to defeat the enigmatic hero for good. He cast a fire spell, which immediately drew scolding from the others. They reminded him that the magic he used was level 6, and warned that using it carelessly could have set everyone on fire. Showed no concern, and insisted that the incident could simply be marked as a failed experiment if everyone ended up reduced to ashes. Yet just as he was about to set the area ablaze, his wand suddenly fizzled out and stopped working. The unexpected event startles him, leaving him questioning whether he might have made a mistake, though experiences like this were unfamiliar to him. A sudden twist emerged when an unexpected presence inquired about the wizard's true intentions. Stepping into that house brought a sense of fear. Quickly leaped backward as Chrome, his face hidden beneath a deep hood, suddenly materialized in front of the wizard, leaving the magician puzzled about when Chrome had arrived. The protagonist recognized that the individuals belonged to the Wizard Association, and noted to himself that traveling to the city had saved him a significant amount of effort. In the city, aimed his wand at his adversary, demanding to know the stranger's identity, as Chrome watched him intently with a grave expression. Fixed him with a look full of hatred, while the boy quietly reasoned that this man must belong to the congregation, and recounted how he had learned his childhood friend was still missing from home. He felt certain that the anxious boy standing before him, nervously clenching his jaw, was responsible for what had happened. He struggled to comprehend why his abilities were being overpowered, especially since the boy showed no signs of mana. At that moment, a crucial memory resurfaced in his mind. He was aware that a member of the family existed who couldn't use magic of any kind. Feeling emboldened, he began to ridicule Chrome, claiming he sensed no mana from the boy and even chuckled, admitting that Chrome had nearly caught him off guard. Despite this, he acknowledged the boy's bravery for standing up to first-class wizards, especially given Chrome's lack of magical power. The boy felt a flicker of surprise and wondered aloud whether they were truly powerful wizards. Admitted that they were, but told him that it was pointless to realize it at this moment, since it was already too late. He realized it was quiet, and wondered aloud if the protagonist's cat had somehow gotten into the bathroom. He remarked that seeing the hopeless expression on the young girl's face earlier was amusing to him. Hearing this filled Chrome with anger, and he demanded to know what they had done to his friend. Felt uncertain about that piece of information, so he simply remarked that perhaps she had moved on to a happier place. Chrome concluded from the information that she was likely alive, yet realized that such knowledge would hold no value for the wizard. He stood there, fully prepared to end the boy's life right then and there. He began to chant his spells, shaping a glowing orb of light in his hands, and asserted that he would keep that vision as a small keepsake. The antagonist hurled the spell toward the protagonist, aiming to send him straight to hell. However, luck was not on his side. Came to a halt when a boy unexpectedly blocked his path. The wizard puzzled over the vanishing spell, feeling as though he had never begun casting it at all. Observing the wizard's confusion, Chrome admitted that he too was caught off guard. The person questioned whether first-class wizards had become so weak nowadays, pointing out that the man had spent an excessive amount of time attempting to cast a level 6 spell. This taunting remark frustrated, who at last understood the situation. Raising his voice, he demanded to know whether the boy without any mana had somehow undone his spell. Chrome, unfazed, merely remarked that he had discovered just how weak his rival's magic truly was, an observation that triggered a significant memory for him. In those days, still relied on their wands for performing any form of magic. He swiftly handled the situation by breaking Swand, leaving it to drop to the floor as stood there, stunned. Still reeling from surprise, he urgently called out to his friends, urging them to come quickly and assist. Yet in his haste, he overlooked a minor but important detail. All of them lay sprawled across the ground. The boy jumped in shock, his mind racing as he wondered when it all had taken place. Fear gripped him as he realized he was now by himself, and he suspected that the other boy must have belonged to the congregation. The situation seemed confusing. Ever since the stranger had suddenly shown up, he had only spoken with him, and there had been no opportunity to witness any attack on his teammates. He demanded an explanation, insisting again that everyone present was a top-level wizard. Someone referred to Chrome as a monster. The boy explained that his intentions were not violent. Harming anyone wasn't his goal. He noted that getting rid of a body would cost too much and would likely leave him feeling guilty. Rather than following his initial plan, he came up with a different strategy. He decided to break the magical circuits inside certain people. This thought filled with fear, as no one before had ever figured out a way to accomplish such a thing. He gazed at Chrome with intense suspicion, doubting that this could be the same hero he had seen the day before. If Chrome truly were that person, he thought, there should be traces of mana radiating from him. When the protagonist started to carry out the destruction, cried out in protest, insisting that he was unable to go through with it, since living without magic would be impossible for him. The main character remained unfazed, and actually felt grateful to them for setting up the sound barrier, as it meant he could ignore any disturbances they might cause. Sense of hopelessness overwhelmed him, driving him to plead for death, yet he still wished to face the end with the dignity of a true mage. Chrome appeared oblivious to desperate words, his attention completely absorbed by the spell meant to destroy the magical circuit. As watched an overwhelming amount of mana take form before his eyes, fear gripped him. He admitted, shaken, that he had believed the boy possessed no inner mana at all. He now found himself confronted by an opponent of extraordinary strength. Once the problem was settled, the boy wandered through the city streets. Elle approached him, curious whether he had managed to locate, but the boy admitted he had not and mentioned that he had questioned a few townspeople. It appeared the girl had already departed. Concern weighed heavily on the girl's mind, fearing that something unfortunate might have occurred, but Chrome felt confident that if there had truly been trouble, would have responded accordingly. Briss took charge of the situation, confident in his ability to resolve it. He had already discovered the girl's whereabouts after encountering an unfamiliar person who claimed to have seen where she went. Elf was caught off guard by this revelation. At that instant, he declared his intention to seek her out. Despite her concerns about the risk, the girl sought reassurance that the boy had no intention of confronting danger by himself, which made him uncomfortable. She then made it clear she was ready to fight as well, stretching out her hand to summon a bow and arrow glowing with magical energy. Voiced her frustration, unwilling to remain idle while events unfolded. Watching her, Chrome recognized the strength she possessed. Despite lacking her moment of understanding, the girl served as the hero's channel for power, making her strong enough to face danger. However, the hero remained reluctant to let her put herself in harm's way. He reassured her that she had nothing to fear, insisting that he would never attempt anything as reckless as she imagined. He asked to stay put and wait for his return, but she was left feeling dissatisfied by his response. Despite her lingering concerns, apologized for her earlier self-centered remarks. The boy, however, gently told her he appreciated her worries, seeing nothing selfish in her care, and admitting that her concern actually made him feel glad. As they parted, promised to remain awake until both of them came back safely. With that, the boy departed, his suspicions confirmed that had indeed fallen into the hands of the mage's congregation. Based on earlier comments, it seemed she had survived, but the lack of further details left a sense of disappointment. It was likely that she had been brought to the institution's hidden headquarters. In the days to come, he had already uncovered where it was, so his only task was to enter the city of underground maze, the very place where disaster had first begun, since the sorcerers were surely experimenting with methods to resurrect the demon king within those depths. It seemed likely that his friend had been abducted to accelerate the process. Normally, the rise of the new demon king would not occur for another week. Despite this, it seemed clear that the congregation was putting in great effort to serve as the host for the demon king. He wasn't certain about her safety, yet knowing she was still alive reassured him that things weren't too dire. They arrived at the destination quickly, drawing the notice of the two mages stationed by the entrance. One of the figures swiftly raised his wand, silently questioning the boy's presence. However, his companion dismissed the concern, insisting it was nothing more than a child and posed no threat. Taking advantage of their distraction, Chrome discreetly activated the time pause and continued with his intended actions, moving past those two idiots with ease. From that moment forward, he became determined to ensure that anyone who dared harm his friend would soon wish they never had. The dungeon was considered low-level and consisted of 12 floors altogether. The boy easily managed to open the doors, yet he was fully aware of what awaited him. Chrome realized his friend was likely far within the building, so reaching him would require moving through all 12 floors. As he proceeded with caution, he observed that numerous traps were hidden along the way. However, that obstacle was not enough to make them give up. He relied on his speed ability and rushed toward the first floor. He darted forward faster than anyone could see, easily outpacing the flurry of arrows launched in his path, none managed to touch him. The mages, having already sensed he was there, grew confused. None of the traps activated, hinting that the enchantment guarding the dungeon had somehow failed. As soon as they spotted Chrome, they raised their voices in an attempt to halt the intruder, however, that attempt failed, as he effortlessly moved right through the group of mages. One of the boys questioned whether he had vanished, but another quickly alerted the group that the boy was right behind them. Before any of them could react, Chrome unleashed his speed and dashed forward using his acceleration power. By shattering the sorcerer's wands, their ability to defend themselves vanished, leaving them utterly helpless. The main character continued to put on a brave front, insisting that everyone settle down and keep their composure. He paused time once more on that floor, repeating the trick he had used at the entrance. After overcoming the initial obstacle with surprising speed, the boy estimated that it would only take him around 20 minutes to arrive at the 12th floor. The boy ascended the staircase as quickly as he had moved before, his determination unwavering as he rushed to rescue his friend. At that moment, he came across a group of creatures, and realized with surprise that these monsters, which had vanished following their horde's loss in the city, had reappeared. The being had already come back to life. However, his gaze settled on one creature more than the rest. This one stood out to him above all others. The chimera, overflowing with mana far beyond what belonged in a low-level dungeon, seemed out of place, as if it were an excess being left over from the creation of the Demon King. At that moment, he recalled the possibility that was already serving as a vessel for the Demon King. In his previous life, the boy had already encountered the woman. She would rise to claim the title of the 10th Demon Queen, earning recognition as the Scarlet, known as the Princess of Purgatory, lingered in his thoughts as memories of their meeting resurfaced in his mind. The young man found himself questioning how the girl had arrived at this moment. As his sword remained lodged in her chest, he toyed with the situation briefly. He begged her to allow him to grant her a respectful death, even as her blood splattered across his face. In this new existence he had found, he dreaded the thought of ending life once more. Suddenly, a piercing cry from the chimera drew his focus. The other mages who had found the intruder were equally puzzled. They wondered how Chrome had managed to arrive at that location, and questioned what fate had befallen the guards who should have been standing in his path. As they hurried off to report to their master, the protagonist once again relied on the familiar method to freeze time. The character carefully made their way across the room, skillfully avoiding every creature in their path. The mages watched in awe as the boy demonstrated his remarkable speed, openly declaring his abilities. The sorcerers from a century earlier had never anticipated that their stronghold would be breached in such an unexpected manner. However, this action left the young men even more bewildered as they received no explanation. Without a moment's hesitation, Chrome single-handedly ripped apart one of the beasts, scattering its pieces through the air and causing the hooded onlookers to become even more terrified. No one really needed to find out the identity of that boy. One of the sorcerers approached the 6th master in haste, bringing urgent news that an intruder had entered the dungeon. Inside the dungeon, the elderly man remarked that he hadn't realized his followers were so feeble, which left the boy flustered and stumbling over his words. The older man then reassured him, reminding the boy that as a mage, he should stay composed, especially since the dungeon was protected by multiple security measures. In addition, the place was crowded with more than 50 sorcerers, their abilities spanning from 3rd class all the way to 1st. Yet, the boy cautioned everyone that communication with the teams stationed above the 5th floor had been lost, suggesting the intruder had most likely reached the 6th or even the 7th floor. The old man grew wary after learning this news. He wanted to know how many trespassers there were. When he found out it was only a single person, he reacted with outrage. He struggled to believe that one trespasser had managed to make it all the way to the 7th floor, casually strolling away from the entrance. He defeated multiple mages standing in his way, which might have made him the hero back then. The elderly man recalled that, along with several other top-ranking mages, had traveled to the city hoping to find the hero. He wondered whether they had been successful in meeting him. However, he did not pause to hear any answers, as his mind was preoccupied with figuring out how to put an end to this individual's actions. Someone eventually broke the silence, requesting permission to face the hero without assistance. The person standing there was an elderly man, his lips curled into a smirk that hinted at ridicule. He felt confident that he would handle the Mage controller himself. Despite Master Number 6 expressing doubts about Rain's ability to manage everything, the elderly man reassured him, explaining that he had previously overseen the labyrinth's defense, so there was no cause for concern. Continuing with the protocol was the only thing left to do. Despite the circumstances, the master insisted that the outsider might be to blame for the demise of the original dragon. Rains remained unfazed, requesting the man to relax, since even with the title of hero, he was still just an ordinary person. His main concern was not the confrontation, but rather his uncertainty about the clever tactics the boy had employed to infiltrate the base by himself. Master 6 was well aware of this unease. After pausing to reflect, the boy whose eyes gleamed like armor reached a decision in his mind. It was pointed out that the boy's ability to make it through a dungeon pact with both mages and traps was remarkable. It seemed likely that the protagonist relied on a similar kind of spell. However, if he kept using it on every floor, his mana would quickly be depleted within moments. It seemed clear that the boy's desperation had driven him to cast spells without any restraint. In order to progress through the stages, he likely lacked much experience, which suggested he was only a novice. Because of this, everyone felt a sense of relief and their nerves settled. In addition, neither of them showed any concern, as more and more low-ranking mages were taken out during the ordeal. The situation remained under control, as long as the intruder stayed away from the laboratory. Alongside Master 6 Calmer, he expressed his gratitude to his co-worker, who offered an additional remark. With the hero now vulnerable, eliminating him seemed like an even simpler task. In addition, possessing mastery over manipulation, magic granted him unparalleled control over sorcery. It was possible for them to force even a hero into servitude. The idea alone left Master 6 amazed. On top of everything else, there was no reason for concern since only a teleportation circle allowed access in or out of that location. Feeling reassured, Master 6 entrusted all responsibilities to Rain. With confidence, Rain entered the circle and was instantly transported to a different floor of the dungeon. At the same time, the young man continued to walk past the group of wizards, just as he always had. Yet this time, concern crept into his mind because he sensed his mana was fading, a clear sign that the wizards were truly investigating for their research. This realization brought a sense of unease. One sorcerer attempted to strike him, but failed just as every other attempt before. Chrome swiftly defeated them as he moved forward. He had at last completed everything on the 7th floor, allowing him to proceed to the next stage. When he arrived at the 8th floor, an unexpected discovery awaited him. A band of sorcerers gathered together, channeling their magic into an intense incantation with the potential to reduce all in its path to cinders. Despite the situation, he remained unfazed, his eyes scanning his surroundings with a serious, unyielding expression. Moving with incredible speed, the group found themselves celebrating the defeat of the invaders before they even noticed what had happened. As the smoke slowly dispersed, he became convinced that Chrome had been completely obliterated, nothing left, not even dust. But as the haze faded away, the main character stood unharmed, his figure clearly visible. The others stared in disbelief, unable to grasp how the boy had survived a level 9 spell without a scratch. At the same time, far away at another teleportation station, Rains appeared once more. He prepared himself to confront the hero responsible for single-handedly defeating the swarm of monsters. The thought crossed his mind that it must take remarkable bravery to harm the very beasts the old man had raised and cared for over so many years. However, his timing could not have been better, as Rains looked forward to trying out the remarkable gifts given to him by his mentor, Cradle. The elderly man drags the creatures behind him, using his chains to control them much like someone might lead animals. The thought of trying out these new abilities filled them with excitement. These extraordinary beings had been brought into existence by, known as the Sage of Life and counted among the 12 great sages. After that, he released the creatures, admiring them as stunning and flawless examples of living beings. The hybrid beasts possessed the abilities of numerous animals, making every one of them a formidable match for the nation's most powerful adventurers. With his wand raised, he started to chant and set his plans into motion. He channeled his magic, enhancing the creatures and making them more powerful than before. They pushed themselves to reach their highest potential. Prior to initiating the command that essentially forced them to obey his every order, making them act as if they were under his complete control. The moment he spotted a chance, he prepared to unleash his final spell, silently anticipating the hero's arrival. He planned to break the man down and reshape him, molding him into an utterly devoted follower. Master Six watched the scene unfold, concluding in his mind that Reigns could not be tamed. He wondered if he might actually be able to overcome the hero in an honest battle. Despite the risks, he realized that obeying the crown's orders increased his odds of success. With that thought, he prepared to move forward with the next step of the plan. He assembled a group of wizards and informed them that, although the invasion had created a bit of commotion, it ultimately posed no real threat. They prepared to assemble several of his followers. A stretcher was being pushed by one of the individuals, and seeing this brought a smile to the master's face. As he watched the breeze resting nearby, he thought to himself that she had great potential as a conductor. He felt certain that this achievement would bring him nearer to earning a place among the 12 sages. At the same time, the old man set up a protective barrier to keep the hero from getting close to him. He was already celebrating his victory, with only Chrome's arrival left to complete the moment. The instant he finished speaking, the boy materialized, giving the impression that some unseen force had called him forth. Even with his features concealed, the intensity of his hatred was unmistakable. Rain's voice trembled as she tried to find out the identity of the newcomer, taken aback to see that the intruder was actually a small boy wearing a hood. Without hesitation, he commands his creatures to attack the boy, and they obey immediately, compelled by the old man's powerful enchantments that leave them no room for doubt. Despite the invader remaining completely still, the creatures started to dissolve into thin air, leaving Reigns in a state of utter disbelief. The man wondered aloud how the boy had managed to do it, since by then he should have already used up all his mana. Curiosity burned within him as he tried to figure out what sort of magic had just occurred. Despite the situation, he managed to keep his composure, confident that a single incantation would be enough to bend the boy to his will. Realizing that Chrome had let his guard down after battling the chimeras, the man decided to seize the opportunity. He lifted his wand, activating its mechanism. Despite all expectations, the boy launched a sudden assault that shattered his own magic circle. As Chrome drew near, he effortlessly snapped his fingers, causing the barrier to crack under his power. Cracks began to form in the massive bubble, causing fear to flicker across the old man's face. Despite his anxiety, he struggled to maintain his composure, remembering that the barrier was the result of a powerful spell. He reassured himself that as long as the boy stayed outside the bubble, he could continue carrying out his scheme. He hadn't anticipated Chrome turning time acceleration against him, which left him caught off guard. A scream echoed as he noticed his mana draining away more quickly than before, making him realize the barrier would soon collapse. The enormous bubble he had created had already begun to fracture. The wizard found himself utterly defenseless, unable to comprehend that he was being defeated by someone so young. In just 5 seconds, he had already subdued her, leaving her baffled about where he had found the immense reserves of mana needed to unleash such formidable spells. Chrome remained unfazed and carried on with his actions, undisturbed by what was happening around him. He drew in every available power nearby, intent on turning them to his own benefit. He absorbed magical energy from the world around him. At that point in history, wizards considered the idea to be completely impossible. As events unfolded before him, Reigns searched his mind for a possible escape plan. He was suddenly overwhelmed by a vision so divine that his eyes fluttered shut for a moment. As his eyes opened once more, a giant clock face filled his gaze, the mystical force of time taking shape before the throne. Even though he found himself in an unfavorable position, he couldn't help but admire its beauty. A particular day resurfaced in his thoughts, recalling how she had been dashing around, uncertain about her next move. The girl wandered deep within the forest, realizing she no longer knew the way out. She noticed a sudden sound that drew her focus, only to realize it came from a small, tired-looking rabbit. Seeing that it was just the harmless animal made her feel at ease. Silently, she wished the bunny wouldn't startle her like that again. While making her way through the forest, she felt confident that her sword skills would help her if a threat appeared. Yet, her thoughts were interrupted when another unexpected sound reached her ears. This time, the creature was far from a harmless bunny. Instead, an enormous beast stood in its place. A monstrous creature clamped its jaws around the helpless bunny, carrying it away. Could hardly believe her eyes when she stumbled upon such a massive creature deep within the woods, and she had no choice but to witness it devour its prey. The girl felt a surge of sympathy for the unfortunate bunny and questioned in her mind what could have brought such a terrifying creature to that place. As she attempted to shift her position, she discovered that she couldn't move a single muscle. The reason behind it remained a mystery to her, yet the creature continued to move closer without hesitation. Someone suddenly emerged, loudly calling out her name. The newcomer was Chrome, his hair ablaze like flames. The girl's eyes widened in surprise once more, but this time it was because her friend had appeared beside her. He comforted her, letting her know that she had nothing to worry about since he was there with her now. He rushed toward the monster, determined to keep it from getting anywhere near the girl. After some time passed, liquid from the creature slowly fell and splattered onto the floor. After a fierce battle with the beast, the protagonist collapsed onto the ground, drained of energy. At last, form began to. Feeling deeply touched, she wrapped her arms around her friend, her heart full of appreciation for his support. Moments earlier, she had been in tears, terrified that her life might end, but he reassured her that the danger had passed and the monster was no longer a threat. Despite his comforting words, guilt lingered within her, and she expressed her regret for not being stronger. Her friend, however, didn't seem worried about it. He actually admitted that he felt weak as well. Because of his own frailty, he believed he might not be able to stay by her side forever. Despite everything, he still hoped to make a vow. He resolved that whenever shed tears, he would always come to her rescue. In exchange, her only requirement was to offer a smile. The girl assured herself she would follow through with her intentions as she gradually emerged from a heavy sleep, feeling utterly confused about her surroundings. At that moment, she became aware of how troubling her situation truly was. Metal cuffs bound her wrists, and the grimy surroundings made her discomfort even clearer. Suddenly, the memory of being taken against her will return to her. Inside the confines of that prison, she found herself questioning the nature of her surroundings. The vast space and enormous test tubes led her to suspect it was some kind of research facility. The area was lined with numerous cultivation tanks. Within one of these tanks, she spotted something particularly unusual, a creature that resembled the fetus of a monster. This discovery suggested that the other tanks might also be housing various small monsters. She began to suspect that the energy from the labyrinth was being harnessed to create these beings. This realization pointed to the possibility that the monstrous horde which attacked the city might have originated from this very place. A sudden motion at her side caught the girl's attention, heightening her sense of alarm. It became clear to her that members of the congregation, who were wizards, had taken hold of her. One individual informed the others that, several hundred years in the future, history would reach a critical moment. At that time, a being called the Demon Lord would emerge, and their mission was to produce an artificial version of this powerful figure. The Demon Coronation Project existed for that very reason, found the discussion to be unusually unsettling. The elderly man went on to explain that everyone gathered in that place was lucky, as they would be given the chance to rise as the next Demon Lord. The final statement drew her focus as he began to share more about himself. Inside the drawer lay a collection of syringes, each one containing cells that once belonged to the ancient Demon King. The cells had been extracted from the fossilized remains of the first dragon, renowned for its unique power of evolution. When those cells were introduced into the wizards, their very nature would transform, and only those whose bodies accepted the change would rise as the next Demon Lord. The apprentices felt a surge of pride at this revelation. felt a wave of disgust as she listened to their gratitude for being allowed into the trial. The plan, as she understood it, aimed to transcend humanity, wipe out all races deemed unworthy, and establish a perfect new world ruled by this so-called demon king. The elderly man grew animated, loudly proclaiming that the moment for the world's transformation had arrived, while one of his followers pulled back their hood. He was selected to begin the test, a task he embraced immediately and without hesitation. The injection was administered straight into the side of the neck. Despite being given the genes, the boy's mind is completely overwhelmed, which causes to become anxious. Despite the situation, the master showed no signs of distress. He simply regarded the subject as another failed experiment, then proceeded to transfer to a new test subject, who was unable to respond before feeling the sharp prick. He experienced the identical outcome as his friend. The elderly man persisted in his actions, eventually causing the entire laboratory to flood with juice. After witnessing everything that had unfolded, braced herself, fully expecting that her own death would come next. Terrified about what might happen to her, she waited anxiously. At last, Massacre appeared. Master Number 6 appeared before her, expressing that locating a worthy successor had proven to be a significant challenge. Despite everything, Master Cradle had personally selected her. Desperate to escape her fate, the girl pleaded with the elderly man, begging him to cease his actions. He ridiculed her, questioning the reason behind her sour mood, and insisted that she ought to feel thankful since this was a significant event in her life. In addition, he confidently stated his belief that she would eventually adjust to those cells and transform into the world's next demon lord. Although his initial wish had been to form someone straight from the congregation, circumstances made that impossible. As a result, he had to choose this alternative. Meanwhile, the girl, isolated and desperate, cried out for assistance from anyone who could hear her. The man made it unmistakably known that there would be no assistance from anyone. She insisted that her friend had already died and was likely being taken apart by one of his allies. The girl, once convinced that Chrome was a hero, now realized it had all been a deception. She struggled to accept that Chrome's destiny was already decided. Desperate, she called out for her friend's assistance, but as he neared's throat, the elderly man reminded her coldly that rescue was no longer an option. At that moment, his luck turned against him as the syringe slipped from his grasp and fell away. The hooded protagonist stepped into view, offering the girl a sense of hope. Noticed her friend standing nearby, and surprise flickered across her face at his unexpected presence. Despite her reaction, he simply reassured her that everything was fine. He spun around and struck a confident pose, announcing that his presence was the reason, which left the girl without words. Curious, she wondered aloud about his reason for coming, and the boy calmly revealed it was because he had seen her in tears. He had given his word that he would always come to her aid, whenever tears filled her eyes. The girl felt a wave of astonishment upon realizing that he still recalled this moment. For Chrome, however, that promise held great significance, making it impossible for him to ever let it slip from his memory. He reached out and grabbed his friend's hand, urging her to return swiftly since the others were waiting for them both. Despite the swirling dust and chaos, Master Number 6 emerged from the haze and demanded to know whether he truly believed they would allow his return without consequence. He admitted that he had no idea how he had arrived at that place, but he noticed that the boy seemed to have no mana left, suggesting that the boy had likely exhausted all of it. Lifting his wand high, he announced that the stubborn child's time had come to an end. Meanwhile, Labras watched the newly arrived wizards as they entered the laboratory. There was no question that these individuals were members of the top class, and at this moment their group had grown to 5. The girl's anxiety grows, even as Chrome calmly assures her that there is nothing to worry about. Feeling a surge of confidence, he assured the old man that their story was far from over. He remembered how he had caused his childhood friend to shed tears, and now he was determined to face the consequences of his actions. As tensions rose, simply observed, while the wizards became surrounded by a mysterious and powerful magic. Even the elderly man faltered, stunned as he recognized that he truly stood before the person they had all anticipated. The original dragon's defeat was brought up, but Chrome found the topic unimportant. He remarked that the beast had been far less powerful than he had expected. Hearing such bold words, the master could only stare in stunned silence. He refers to him as a monster. Despite his lack of mana, the other wizards refused to retreat. Instead, the sorcerers recognized this as their opportunity and joined forces to launch a coordinated attack against him. As the group lifted their wands and unleashed powerful level 6 spells, massive stones hurtled toward the boy, causing Labras to grow anxious for her friend's safety. Despite everything, Chrome appeared full of confidence. Energized by the fight, the elderly man encouraged the boy to embrace the overwhelming force coming his way. Yet, as always, the main character activated his time-stopping ability, stopping the barrage of arrows before they could make contact. Meanwhile, who had squeezed her eyes shut to avoid witnessing the chaos, was stunned by the unexpected turn of events. Master Number 6 found himself speechless as he confronted the boy. Soon, curiosity overpowered his silence, and he wondered aloud about the nature of the mysterious spell. To him, it seemed as though the boy was defying the fundamental laws that governed their world. Despite the danger, the boy revealed a hidden skill, effortlessly breaking apart the flying stones with his sword as though they posed no threat at all. The wizards stared in disbelief, rendered speechless by the turn of events. Deep down, they all recognized that if the mischievous child hadn't interfered, everything would have unfolded exactly as they intended. Was well aware of the situation. He realized that he alone stood in the way of the coronation project for the next Demon King. If things continued this way, people would believe the original dragon had perished during an expedition, and then the congregation would continue to resurrect new Demon Kings one after another. By doing so, the organization's schemes would unfold exactly as intended. A dreadful fate had once seemed inevitable, but now that possibility had disappeared. The elderly man stared in disbelief, his voice rising as he demanded to know how much the boy understood and where he had learned such things. He demands a response and even resorts to making threats. Chrome destroyed his own wand with a swift motion, just as he had done to the wands belonging to the other wizards in the room, leaving them powerless without their magical tools. He aimed his sword directly at the old man, who stood before him without any means of defense. The boy ignores the question and simply states that the alternate future stops at this point. Remarked internally, amazed by how extraordinary the situation seemed. At the same time, the elderly man insists that things are not finished, reaching into his belongings to retrieve a syringe. Preparing himself, he set out to claim his place as the future Demon King. Just as he prepared to press the needle against his own throat, the protagonist intervened, halting his actions. The protagonist had anticipated every possible move ahead of time. He understood that the crown would supply additional resources if the situation required it. The boy gazed at his empty palm, puzzled as he wondered when Chrome had taken the object from him. The boy simply advised him to quit for good, claiming that the sort of brilliance needed was beyond what wizards like him could handle. Feeling uneasy, he wondered how the protagonist could possibly know that. However, the boy clarified that he wasn't trying to intimidate him. He only meant to offer a friend's suggestion. He inquired about the location of the remaining Demon King's cells, determined to collect every last one. However, before revealing anything, the elderly man paused, curious about the boy's plans for those powerful objects. It was plain for Chrome to see. He declared his intention to erase all remnants of the Demon King from that world, his anger fueling a fierce determination to carry out his plan. Revealing his intentions may not have been wise, despite the elderly man's promise to give him everything. After claiming that Master Number 6 had destroyed every creation tube in the lab, he gained the freedom to seize anything he desired. This was an outcome that took Chrome completely by surprise. The demons had stirred from their slumber. The situation was changing so quickly that it was becoming impossible to manage. He reached for and led her away from the turmoil, and together they stood back, witnessing flames engulf the circus. As the wizards burst into laughter, they mocked the boy, warning him to savor the fear that awaited in the Demon King's prison cells. Amid the swirling uncertainty, the boy chooses to look in on his friend to make sure she is all right, and the girl reassures him that she is fine. Chrome wondered aloud if the mysterious liquid might have touched her, but since it had not, he lifted her up in relief, rejoicing at the good news. Before entertaining doubts about whether the fluid within the syringe truly held cells belonging to the demon lord. The question stirred up vivid recollections of the wizards as they burst apart, each meeting their end in succession. After being administered the fatal injection, he found it impossible to linger on those thoughts for long. A far more serious disaster loomed ahead, prompting the girl to propose that the creatures might have originated from the former demon lord's cells. The boy guided her to a more secure area within the room and inquired about her well-being. She reassured them that there was no need for concern, but reminded them to take care not to let any mana escape. Carried out the task willingly, never expressing any dissatisfaction. The boy gazes intently at the wizards who remain upright, his eyes also lingering on the man nearby. The master muttered complaints, recalling the lengths they had gone, both ordinary and extraordinary, to acquire those cells from the demon lord. He actually preferred it when the humans allowed them to inhabit their bodies. Clutching a syringe in his hand, he suggests that this action would be even more effective now that so many people are watching. With that, he instructs his followers to begin the process of evolution. Without any hesitation, every one of them proceeded to inject the substance. Despite the similarities to previous events, the overwhelming energy surging through the sorcerers' bodies led to their heads bursting apart, and even Master Number 6 appeared to be struggling with unexpected challenges. The boy unleashed a powerful scream, energy radiating from him in every direction. Almost instantly, a dark, sinister aura surrounded his body, causing him to shift and grow into a monstrous, towering creature. For a brief instant, he feels a surge of triumph at being the sole person who is a match. He burst into laughter, overcome with the joy of reaching his ultimate ambition. At the same moment, stared at the unfolding events, his face twisted in terror. The boy revealed his identity, stating that he was formally recognized as the second demon lord. As the second reveled in his own achievements, he commanded the younger ones to kneel before him and give up. They stood before the demon lord, destined to observe his ascent from a unique vantage point, as the true disaster was only starting to unfold. Turned to Chrome, seeking confirmation about whether the figure they had just encountered was truly a demon lord. His companion immediately dismissed the idea, insisting that nothing of the sort had occurred. According to him, those individuals were merely troublemakers. He clarified further, saying the supposed demon lord was nothing more than a regular boy, hardly worth their attention. Their current concern had shifted away from both the wizards and the chimera before them. At that moment, a mass of slime on the ground began to collect and swell, surging up in a wave that engulfed the demon. He was caught off guard and let out a startled scream, demanding to know what had just happened. He became fully submerged within the swirling liquid. It seemed to pierce through his flesh, making. A mighty roar escaped him, fueled by disbelief that anything could truly harm him. With his newfound power as the great demon king, he felt invincible. All the other demons obeyed his orders, which meant the liquid was probably only residue from the cultures. He sensed a fierce heat searing his skin, overwhelmed by a feeling of defeat. Desperation him, and he cried out for assistance with the helplessness of a frightened child, insisting. Realized his desire to keep living just as a mysterious and terrifying figure emerged in the distance, filling him with fear. At that moment, her friend confirmed that the ominous presence was actually the Demon King. The idea that the wizards might not have realized the culture fluid could act as an aggregator seemed almost unbelievable, even to the girl. Still, as she considered it, the explanation fit. At the time, the boy didn't realize why the wizard failed to handle such immense power, but this understanding came to him much later. He now stood before the second demon lord, which had evolved into its ultimate form, a slime so powerful that the people called it a creature capable of swallowing entire countries and oceans. In this way, the world witnessed the emergence of a second demon lord. The memory of that enormous beast lingered in the protagonist's mind. In his previous existence, the creature had consumed many kingdoms and relentlessly expanded its strength. The creature loomed with an immense, terrifying form that sent chills down anyone who saw it. In addition, despite its unassuming appearance, Its power allowed it to break down and absorb whatever it came into contact with, be it solid objects, spiritual entities, people, or even their unique powers. Despite the boy's memories, the demon lord he remembered was much larger than this. Based on his recollections, its birth was still a week in the future. Perhaps this early occurrence could be traced back to his meddling. Naturally, before he traveled to the past, he had already considered ways to restrain that creature. However, an unexpected obstacle emerged. In his weakened condition, he realized he lacked the strength to claim victory. Recognizing the danger, he reached out to and urged them both to escape quickly while the monster remained distracted, devouring the other demons. She nodded in agreement, prompting the boy to trail behind her with concern, his thoughts focused on her safety as his top priority. He reached out and took her by the arm, leading her forward while using the mana crystals that Rains had given him. Chrome let know that he had brought the crystals along to trick the Demon King. The king's attention was always drawn to sources of mana, making it impossible for the girl he was escorting to make use of them, even briefly. Amidst the turmoil, he discovered a stone and paused to interact with it, feeling a surge of satisfaction when he realized it still functioned. Unaware of his motive, wondered aloud about his actions, prompting him to explain that this chamber lacked both entrance and exit. This situation posed no real issue, as they planned to rely on the dungeon's teleportation system to make their escape. Wanted to know whether he was familiar with using the item, and the protagonist went on to clarify that he had come across it several times before. This was a thought that lingered in her mind. He found himself unable to reveal that, in his previous existence as a member of the congregation's elite, he had once used dungeons like these to carry out forbidden experiments. He understood that each dungeon operated differently. The challenge with this particular one was that it required a massive verification process powered by mana. At that moment, accomplishing such a task was beyond his ability. Despite the challenges, he realized that knowing when the last exit from the dungeon occurred could help him come up with a plan. Unfortunately, there was no way for him to uncover that information either. He continued like that until a brilliant idea suddenly came to him. He recalled that this feature had once been used to move the original dragon and an army of monsters in the era known as the Calamity. So his task was simply to adjust the control panel to match that specific point in time. He tapped into his power to turn back time. The boy carries out the function smoothly, encountering no difficulties. He raised his voice, instructing to head into the cultivation area so she could be moved out of the dungeon. The girl hurried away, calling out a warning to her friend as she went. The news spread quickly that the demon lord was approaching their location, prompting someone to urge him to move faster and enter the place immediately. The boy approached the girl who remained inside the circle but halted abruptly, deepening her confusion. Chrome expressed regret for his impending actions, leaving puzzled at first. As the transfer process began, realized with dismay that her friend would not be accompanying her. The main character clarified that he needed to defeat the creature immediately. Could hardly believe it, suspecting it had to be some absurd idea from him, and wondered if he truly meant it. She worried that, regardless of his confidence, confronting such a creature alone would surely mean his death. Overwhelmed, shouted at him to hurry and join her, especially since they had only just reconciled and he was already jeopardizing everything. Uncertain about his. This time he firmly assures her of his commitment, though the girl remains confused by his determination. Despite the danger, Chrome pointed out that the ideal time to confront such a creature was right after it appeared, and he knew he needed to act quickly to gain the upper hand. He knew that failing to act would leave his friends and everyone at the mercy of the creature's overwhelming strength. If that happened, disaster would follow. The girl he had vowed to protect would be transformed into a demon beyond the reach of his help. He reassures that things will work out. He believed he had become more powerful. Trapped within the tube, she felt a surge of desperation and silently called out for the boy. Despite her distress, he maintained that his efforts had paid off and he had grown stronger, trying to comfort her by promising there was no reason to shed tears. He reassured her that their bond would never break, vowing to stay by her side and safeguard everyone they cared about. Then he requests that show a smile, hoping to fulfill a promise he made to a girl who is far away, before turning away. The character approached the new lord, wondering aloud whether he had any desire to begin a conflict. Now he was determined to settle the course of his future for good. The creature extended its arm, its shape warping until it resembled, but in a twisted, monstrous version. At the same time, everyone who had been consumed by her desperately attempted to draw attention. The protagonist wondered aloud whether he had any feelings for them, and pleaded for a chance to be included. She tried every trick she knew to win his favor, while that unattractive being wondered aloud if he wished to continue the game for eternity. With a mischievous grin, Chrome offered an apology while drawing his sword. Without hesitation, he severed the lord's hand, letting it drop to the floor, while explaining that it was necessary so he could go back to a particular location. He realized he had no choice but to deal with the creature immediately. The slime wondered aloud about his decision, questioning why he would turn down such a chance despite his obvious weakness. Drawing closer with its grotesque face, the creature questioned whether there had been any purpose to behaving in such a manner. As the creature's arm regenerated once more, she chose not to dwell on the reasons behind the boy's lack of cooperation. Deep down, she felt certain that this time, she would never have to face solitude again. Soon, everyone would inevitably be drawn into it. The chaos extended to her loved ones and the place she lived, threatening to engulf not just them, but the whole world along with all that stood before it. The purpose was to allow it to become a part of its own body. She extends her many hands in an attempt to catch the protagonist, yet he reacts swiftly, using his powers to evade her grasp, leaving the area as fast as possible. As Chrome continued to escape, the monster let out a wild, unhinged laugh. Its curiosity was piqued, yet it was no stranger to this kind of chase. Even though it taunted Chrome refused to stop and sprinted farther away. Seizing the moment, the creature used its powers to raise several concealed stones from the ground, which led to nearby stalactites breaking apart. Amusement filled the air as others found humor in the predicament the main character faced. Now, with the added challenge, he was forced to quickly move out of the way to escape being struck by the flying objects as well. He was so absorbed in his task that he barely realized a slime creature had slid up close to his foot. Fortunately, he was able to get away by seizing a big rock and using it as a makeshift raft to stay afloat. High above, he pointed his sword toward the demon, convinced that he was facing the most terrible creature of all. If the creature consumed him whole, events would unfold just as they had a century later. The monster threatened to bring an end to everything he had ever known, and even his friends faced the danger of being consumed. His family, and numerous other nations would all become a feast for that monstrous force. During that time, nobody had the strength to challenge the demon king standing before him. Even decades later, the creature's hunger would only cease once it was locked away by a seal. Now, as he confronted the beast directly, he realized he was completely outmatched. Physical force alone had proven useless against the creature. Finding a way to accelerate time until the beast succumbed to old age seemed nearly impossible. He realized, too, that tapping into the ambient mana was futile, as the monster was capable of consuming even that energy. Things would become even more dangerous if he tried to use magic against the creature, since it would only end up absorbing his powers. The boy knew that the worst outcome would be if that creature also gained magical abilities. Despite this fear, he was determined to achieve victory no matter what it took, whether the task was easy or impossible. He gazed intently at the object clasped in his hand, the syringe he had secretly taken from Master Number 6 earlier. After all, he had inquired about where the Demon King cells were not simply to collect and discard them. In his previous life, he had already crossed many forbidden boundaries to gain power, so he saw no reason to avoid doing the same now. In his previous existence, he lacked the necessary traits to match the cells. Because of this, he worked tirelessly to gain those traits and boldly injected the mysterious fluid into his own neck. Had he attempted this before, using even a tiny bit of the genes, he would not have survived. Without any hesitation, the initial decade of his efforts proved to be a nightmare. An overwhelming pain plagued him constantly, robbing him of sleep and leaving his body utterly exhausted. He recalled times when exhaustion would overwhelm him to the point of blacking out, never finding any relief. This relentless suffering clung to him like a never-ending nightmare. It took an entire decade before he could inject just a single drop without pain. Another 10 years passed before he could handle 2 drops. Bit by bit, he continued this slow progress. Gradually, the protagonist learned how to master his abilities, eventually reaching a point where he could manipulate time itself. Yet, the journey demanded so much time that by the moment he possessed the strength to shield all he cared about, the very people he hoped to save had come to fear him. In the minds of the people, Chrome was soon viewed as a threat to all of humanity, his image twisting into that of a monster. He had lived that way for a century. Things had changed this time. Although he never achieved the title of hero, he felt content with that outcome. His true desire was simply to protect everyone and everything around him. It made no difference what sort of creature he turned into. Once the injection took effect, he was entirely changed. Now he stood before his next challenger, introducing himself as ruler of time and space. The boy's identity was unrecognizable after the transformation. The sheer amount of power astonished the demon lord. He offers his admiration, expressing that what the other did was truly remarkable. He confirmed that the power was identical and encouraged the boy to experiment with it. He was certain that, in the end, the magic would be willingly given to them, making it possible for them to achieve far greater things for the world. The man swiftly reached out toward the boy, his arms shooting forward in a rapid motion. He reached out to him, wondering whether he would be willing to surrender it all. The protagonist insisted that the effort was futile, explaining that he had anticipated this encounter ever since witnessing the results of his choices in the future. Without hesitation, he summoned his newly acquired magic spear by casting the spell called Zero. The Demon King hurried over in an attempt to prevent the collapse, but he was too late to stop it. A sensation of his body breaking apart overwhelmed him, while Chrome stood invincible, silently observing the beast from. Despite the circumstances, the Demon King questioned the reality before him. In response, the main character clarified that if the phenomenon had truly been magic, the monster would have absorbed it. Each statement he uttered seemed to astonish the creature more than before. Despite his efforts, the magic he wielded was bound by the rules of that realm, since it drew its strength from the Demon Lord's power. After that moment, the responsibility shifted to him. This was the origin of the third Demon Lord, known as Gate, the ruler of time and space. The young man became infamous as the most powerful creature alive, boldly stating that this was his true form in the future. He unveiled his Demon Lord ability, mastery over space and time, giving him the extraordinary power to manipulate the very flow of time that governed the world itself. The slime was overwhelmed with disbelief, its voice rising in a desperate outcry as it demanded to know how such a feat could be possible. Consumed by rage, the slime threatened to destroy him, describing in gruesome detail all the ways it planned to tear him apart, promising to dissolve him limb from limb. Gradually, the slime began to melt away, all the while desperately pleading with the boy for mercy. The creature resisted its fate, longing for a different ending. It had never known what it was like to hope, to dream, or to feel compassion and love, emotions that in the end belonged to both of them. Yet, Chrome insisted that the path the creature desired led only to destruction, a fate he understood all too clearly. Once the creature had consumed all that it wished for, it was left to weep in isolation, surrounded by endless darkness. However, the monster refused to accept this truth. Unbothered by the interruption, the protagonist went on to explain that, regardless of its longing for affection, everything the creature touched would eventually vanish. Because of this, it made no difference how much it consumed. Loneliness would always remain its companion. The slime grew even angrier at these words, believing the boy was not telling the truth. It reasoned that a monster designed from the idea of a perfect life could not have been erased, at least so it thought. Still, the protagonist maintained that the creature had been programmed to embody a flawless existence, yet such a being could never truly experience happiness. In reality, he had attempted to stop its creation altogether, and since that was impossible, he simply wished for it to have. The slime couldn't understand, since it realized the boy's strength was nearly depleted, and there was no way it could absorb all that he possessed. The blond young man calmly clarified that he possessed an abundance of magical energy, though it remained hidden from the creature's perception. Gathering the surrounding mana as he always did, He further frustrated his adversary, who demanded to know the source of such overwhelming power. The protagonist likened the situation to the impossibility of measuring how much water someone had consumed over their lifetime, pointing out that magical reserves were just as immeasurable. He explained that his magical strength throughout all his incarnations was now linked to his present self. In contrast, if he had been forced to rely only on his past self, he would have been powerless to change anything. In fact, when he attempted to do so, it resulted in the destruction of his entire family. He drew upon the power known as Zero. The creature gleamed with an eerie darkness, its form illuminated in a way that made it appear both menacing and shadowy. The weapon lodged in its torso burned with a radiant, glowing light. The liquid gradually transformed, its surface shimmering with an almost hypnotic beauty. The girl gazed at the scene in amazement, her curiosity drawing her closer to the protagonist. This time, she managed to approach him and wondered aloud about the reason for his tears, uncertain if they were adversaries or something else entirely. In response, the protagonist shared that his tears were not from fear or loneliness anymore. He explained that those feelings had left him, and with newfound courage, he encouraged the girl to bring things to an end. Following his words, the creature burst apart into countless droplets of gentle, warm water, marking the successful completion of their mission to defeat it. After exiting the dungeon, the boy shifted back into his true self, utterly drained of energy and filled with remorse for taking in such a large number of demonic cells all at once. Now his main worry shifted to making sure was unharmed. He silently wished that her tears had nothing to do with him. Deep down, he longed for her to greet his return with a joyful smile. He leaped through the doorway. He noticed his friend's outline standing in that spot. He hurried toward her and fell into her waiting arms. She had stopped crying now and instead expressed her frustration by calling Chrome foolish for making her worry without cause. Chrome responded with an apology, and she accepted it with kindness. As they exited, the doors of the dungeon shut on their own behind them. After a while had passed, the boy lay sprawled across the floor, taking a moment to rest. Someone came over and remarked about how hot it was outside. Ella appeared, her usual bright smile lighting up her face. However, her expression quickly shifted to one of mild annoyance as she expressed her frustration to the protagonist. She explained that she had been searching for him, only to find that he had vanished without a trace. She told him she required his help with a matter, prompting Chrome to inquire if there was a problem. She went on to clarify that her father wished to discuss the Labyrinth of Saul with the protagonist after hearing reports of its collapse. Additionally, she revealed that an experiment carried out by the 6 wizards had come to light. Following those events, investigative groups arrived from the capital, successfully saving several kidnapped wizards. Up to that point, all she understood was that the person who had unraveled the entire plot had gained a reputation as a mysterious figure. The girl flashed a sly grin, leaving the boy puzzled as he wondered about the meaning behind her expression. She appeared to be in a cheerful mood, clearly pleased about something. Smiling, she revealed a basket overflowing with treats, mentioning that she had spent her morning baking these cookies, which looked especially tasty. She then welcomed her friend to share the sweets with her and make the most of the day together. At that moment, showed up and reminded her coworker about the commitment they had made to train together that day, hinting that he might have forgotten. It turned out that this was actually true. Chrome couldn't hold back his laughter when he noticed his friend's irritation, while acknowledged her efforts with her usual words of encouragement. The original plans shifted, prompting Chrome to ask the girl to join them for training, and she happily accepted, promising to support both of them. Content with her cookies, she felt she didn't require anything more to sit quietly and observe their practice session. With that, their decision was made, and the boys. He felt a warm happiness as he saw his friends nearby. Memories from his previous life reminded him that the Demon King's return was inevitable, and that the conflict with the Association of Wizards would go on. But at that moment, both Elle and stood by his side. Determined not to repeat his past mistakes, he resolved to safeguard all that he cherished, everything he had once lost, relying solely on his own strength.